Nyquist, listed at number 45 of the top 100 conservatives by the London Telegraph, uses his weight to push a misleading tax scheme called the fair tax. Yet it seems like he is just another face among many betraying the authentic roots of the United States or American conservatism. Let's examine why the fair tax is repellent to real conservatives and violent to reason. The name fair tax suggests some sort of equity, or perhaps an ability to generate revenue without distorting the economy. This is incorrect. The real problem is with the word fair. What's fair? Neither this author nor any other can say. The reason is the extreme subjectivity of the concept fair. No two people will ever agree on what's fair. Therefore it's difficult to get past the name. Fair has no meaning. Total retail sales in 2008 were around $4.5 trillion, and total federal spending was just under $3 trillion. A federal consumption tax would require a rate of 67.5% for 2008. With the explosion of the federal bureaucracy and federal spending under the Obama administration, the tax would need to be much higher. That rate assumes pre-Obama spending levels, no rebates, and no shift in supply or demand. Is 67% more or less fair than the 20 to 30% consumption tax proposed by fair tax supporters? Supporters claim the fair tax will eliminate the Internal Revenue Service. What supporters fail to mention is the necessity for an agency equally as nosy, overbearing, and officious to manage rebates and collect the tax. The IRS will disband in name only. It will be merely transformed into a different bureaucracy with as much power and with as many guns. A common benefit claimed by supporters of the fair tax is the myth that it is a tax that is passed along to consumers. Customers and firms are responsive to price changes, in other words, market participants have price elasticity. This price responsiveness is reflected in the slope of the supply and demand curve. This is a supply and demand curve developed in previous videos. It is indisputably agreed that a price emerges as a result of market processes at the time and location the market exists. Let's begin with an unobstructed market peacefully buying and selling Q goods at a mutually agreed price P. This is represented by point A, where the supply and demand curves intersect on this graph. When a tax is added, the supply curve shifts left, representing a decrease in supply. This shift along a stationary demand curve leads to a new equilibrium highlighted as point B on this graph. With the new equilibrium point, a less satisfying price and quantity emerge. The market adjusts to the government intrusion by adjusting to a higher price labeled P plus tax with a decrease in output labeled Q plus tax. The new higher price results in a decrease in the ability and desire of customers and sellers to be as satisfied as they were before the tax was imposed. This is common sense, and forms a deductive truth about the economy. When governments raise taxes, economies slow down just like a driver slows when they apply brakes. We can now slice and dice the result to better understand the elusive problem of tax incidence. Tax incidence analysis answers the question, who pays how much tax? A framework comparing economic conditions with the consumption tax and the economy in its natural state can be created. This is that analysis framework. Three major regions become apparent as we work through the problem. The first region is the revenue generated by the firm as a result of peaceful exchange. A firm's revenue is defined as the price of the goods sold multiplied by the quantity or the number of units sold. We see the firm's revenue before the tax is the red box bounded by the area from the origin of the graph to Q, to A, to P. After the tax is added, revenue drops. The reduced revenue area is the smaller hashed red area described by the origin of the graph to Q plus tax to C to P prime. Clearly a much smaller amount of revenue is available to the firm after the fair tax is added. Often supporters of the fair tax claim this isn't the case because firms just pass it along. Every firm who requires operating revenue above the reduced revenue box will go out of business. Yes, the fair tax will cause businesses to go bankrupt and is in no way a business-friendly policy. The fair tax is clearly unfair when viewed in this light. The lost revenue is the box described as the area Q, to A, to P prime, to C, to Q plus tax. This region is the pink region in this graphic. Remember to pause the video to fully review the graphs. Another region belongs to the revenue generated by the tax. The price of the fair tax is the vertical distance between B and C in this graph. The quantity of taxed goods can be seen as the length of the horizontal line stretching from P to D. That means the revenue generated by the tax can be described as the box P prime to C to B to P plus tax. This is the combined purple and green regions in this picture. The tax revenue box is divided in two parts. The lower of the two boxes was once part of the revenue of the firm but is taken by the government. This is the purple area on this graph, and is described by the region P prime to C to D to P. This is revenue shifted from the firm's operations to the tax collector and again proves the consumption tax cost is not passed on as Grover Norquist and other prominent statist conservatives claim. The second revenue region is the green box bounded by P to D to B to P plus tax. This is new tax revenue redistributed from customers to the government. The purple box is tax revenue paid by the firm and the green box is tax revenue paid by consumers. The split depends on the elasticity or responsiveness of supply or demand. The third region is deadweight loss or excess burden. This is simply economic activity which ceases to happen. It evaporates. All parties, consumers, firms, and the government suffered from this loss. Graphically, it is the triangle B, A, C, or the combined blue and orange area in this image. It is split, like the tax revenue box, between deadweight loss borne by customers and firms. The upper triangle B, D, A, is deadweight loss suffered by consumers and is the orange triangle in the graph. The lower triangle D, A, C, represents deadweight loss borne by firms and is shown as the blue triangle. Early estimates by Jules Dupuit in mid-19th century put deadweight loss around the square of the tax rate. Paul McKeown and Alan Woodfield derived an estimate between 25 cents and $1.46 between 1987-88 for every dollar in taxes raised. The point is that nobody benefits from deadweight loss and it is big. Few special cases have revenues completely or nearly completely passed along to consumers. This happens when the customer is totally unresponsive to price changes which happen rarely. So far, the supply and demand curves presented have been unit elastic or curves that are neither elastic nor inelastic. Changing price responsiveness of consumers and firms tells us more about the fair tax. The first case we will consider is inelastic supply, with unit elastic demand, as noted in this graph by a steeply sloped supply curve. With inelastic supply, we see a giant drop in revenue to firms with the addition of the fair tax. At the same time, we see a giant increase in tax revenue to the government. The revenue box tells us that the firm pays the bulk of the tax with consumers paying a minor share. Again, this is an example where the fair tax is not a pass-along tax. We also see a fairly large amount of deadweight loss which is an economy killer. Next, let's consider elastic supply with unit elastic demand as presented in this new graph by a supply curve that doesn't have much positive slope. The firm's revenue doesn't drop much, and the taxing authority doesn't collect much revenue. Of the collected revenue, consumers pay the bulk of the tax. Because tax revenue taken from this market is relatively small, we see the deadweight loss from the tax is relatively small. Customers suffer the bulk of the deadweight loss. Please click here or on the link bar to go to part 2 of this video.